Life has a way of whispering the truth long before you are ready to hear it. And the truth is this: no one is coming to save you. No mentor is going to walk into your life and hand you the discipline you refuse to build. No secret hack is going to erase the years you spent drifting. No miracle is going to pull you out of the hole you dug with your own hands. We grow up in a world that teaches us to wait for approval, for guidance, for inspiration, for a moment where everything magically makes sense. But that moment never comes. Life is not a movie where the hero discovers his destiny because some wise old master appears at the perfect time. Life is raw, unpredictable, indifferent, and brutally honest. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop waiting and start becoming. There will be people who encourage you, people who help you, people who teach you, but none of them can save you, because no one can fight your inner battles for you. No one can defeat your weaknesses. No one can silence your excuses, and no one can live your life. Every step forward demands that you decide on your own to stop running from responsibility and start running toward the person you were meant to become. This realization isn't meant to break you. It is meant to liberate you. Because the day you understand that no one is coming is the day you reclaim your power. The day you finally stop depending on chance and start depending on yourself. The day you rise from helplessness into absolute control. Most people never reach this stage. They cling to the illusion that someone else will change their life. A partner, a teacher, a friend, society, fate, God, luck, timing. But the Stoics understood a timeless truth. Everything external is unstable. You can't rely on people, outcomes, or circumstance. The only thing that belongs to you entirely is your character, your actions, your discipline. And until you build those, you will always feel weak. That's why this journey starts with the harshest lesson. You are alone in your fight, and that is exactly why you can win. When you accept that the weight of your future rests on your back, you stop begging life to be easier and start demanding more from yourself. You stop complaining about your situation and start shaping it. You stop dreaming about becoming strong and start acting like someone who deserves strength. And that's where your transformation begins. Not in comfort, not in praise, not in waiting, but in confrontation. The confrontation between who you are and who you must become. So listen carefully, because this is the doorway to the life you want. No one is coming to save you, but you can save yourself. And that is the greatest power any human can hold. Part 1 begins the moment you understand what it means to stand alone. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself from the world or push away the people who care about you. It means you stop expecting anyone to fix what you refuse to confront. It means you stop outsourcing your strength to others. Most people live like passengers in their own lives. They hand over control to fear, to laziness, to distraction, to people who don't even care about them, and then they wonder why nothing changes. But the truth is simple. If you do not take responsibility for your own growth, no one will. Nobody wakes you up in the morning and forces you to conquer your weaknesses. Nobody drags you to your dreams. Nobody teaches you discipline if you don't seek it. You have to become the one who demands excellence from yourself. You have to become the one who refuses to accept a mediocre life. And that begins with one foundational mindset shift. Everything in your life is your responsibility, even the things that weren't your fault. This is where most people break. They say, "Why should I take responsibility for something I didn't cause?" Because responsibility is the only path out of suffering. You don't take responsibility to blame yourself, you take it to empower yourself. If everything is someone else's fault, then you are helpless. If everything is under your control, then you can shape any outcome. And that is the mindset of those who rise from nothing to greatness. They don't wait for a savior, they become their own savior. They don't wait for the world to change, they adapt. They don't wait for motivation, they train themselves to act even when they feel weak. They don't drown in excuses, they hunt for solutions. That's why the people who rise in life are not the ones who have the best circumstances, but the ones who refuse to be broken by them. You have to see your struggles, your trauma, your failures, your flaws as raw material, not obstacles, not punishment, material. Each problem is a blade that can sharpen you or cut you. It all depends on how you hold it. And the moment you understand this, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And you start asking, "What can I build from this?" That shift alone places you above 99% of people. Most people will never make that shift because it's easier to blame life than to rebuild your life. It's easier to say, "I can't," than to try. It's easier to wait than to move. And humans are addicted to the path of least resistance. Comfort seduces us. Pleasure distracts us. Fear paralyzes us. And we waste years waiting for someone to push us into action. But no one is coming. No one is going to pull you out of bed. No one is going to make you chase your dreams. No one is going to erase your self-doubt. And the moment you stop expecting that, you become unstoppable. Because now you realize that the only person who can do it is you. And that means you no longer wait, you initiate. You no longer hope, you act. You no longer fear, you face. The Stoics believed that a person becomes free the moment they stop relying on external things for internal peace. And that's what this path demands, that you build an inner world so strong that no chaos outside can break it. You have to become the type of person who does not crumble under pressure, who does not fold when life becomes heavy, who does not run away when things get difficult. You have to learn to stand firm when everything around you tries to push you down. That is the foundation of self-rescue. And it starts with discipline. Discipline is not a punishment. It's a gift, a weapon that lets you shape your future regardless of your mood, your past, or your circumstances. Every disciplined action you take is a vote for the future you want. Every time you choose responsibility over excuses, you strengthen the warrior inside you. Every time you act when you don't feel like it, you break another piece of your old self. And that is how transformation happens, not through inspiration, but through repetition. You don't become unstoppable by getting hyped once. You become unstoppable by showing up every day, even when everything inside you screams for comfort. Your old self will try to hold on to you. It will whisper excuses. It will tell you to rest when you haven't earned it. It will convince you that you're not ready. It will feed your doubts, your fears, your insecurities. But you cannot negotiate with weakness. You must replace it. And you replace it with action, tiny action, consistent action, relentless action. You become the person who acts before thinking, who executes before hesitating, who moves while others stand still. And the more you do this, the more you realize that your potential was never the problem, your hesitation was. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled with only one thing: disciplined action. That is your staircase. That is your weapon. That is your salvation. Because when you act consistently, everything changes. Your confidence, your identity, your results. You begin to see yourself as someone capable, someone worthy, someone strong. And once you see yourself that way, the world begins to respond to you differently. People respect the individual who respects himself. Opportunities come to the individual who shows up. Strength gravitates toward the individual who refuses to break.
Part 2 begins when you finally understand that saving yourself is not a single moment of courage, but a long, relentless, almost brutal commitment to growth, a promise you make to yourself every morning and every night that you will not return to the old version of you, no matter how tempting it becomes, because the old you was built from fear, excuses, and hesitation, while the new you must be built from discipline, responsibility, and self-respect. And the truth is that the journey of becoming your own savior is not glamorous. It is not a highlight reel. It is the countless hours where no one sees you, no one praises you, no one applauds you, the silent war fought between you and your weaknesses in the dark corners of your mind. And this battle is exhausting because your weaknesses know you better than any enemy in the world. They know when to strike. They know your cravings, your temptations, your moments of doubt, your desire for comfort, and they attack when you are tired, lonely, frustrated, stressed, or overwhelmed. And that is why becoming your own savior requires a different mindset. A warrior's mindset, one that does not crumble under pressure, but grows because of it, one that does not run from difficulty, but moves into it, one that does not hope for an easier path, but becomes stronger so the path no longer intimidates them. And this transformation begins internally long before the external world sees it, because the first thing you must learn is mastery over your reactions, since most people are controlled by emotion without realizing it. They are pulled by impulses, ruined by anger, paralyzed by fear, manipulated by opinions, and defeated by self-doubt. Not because the world is cruel, but because they never learned to govern themselves. But when you take full responsibility and accept that no one is coming to save you, you no longer allow emotions to drag you around like a puppet. Instead, you become the thinker behind the emotion, the observer behind the reaction, the guardian of your own mind. And it is this internal authority that begins to change everything in your external world. The Stoics taught that events mean nothing until you assign meaning to them. And once you understand this, you stop being controlled by outcomes and start being controlled by your values. Because weakness collapses when situations go bad, but strength endures because strength is built on principles, not moods. And that is why you must learn to show up when you don't feel like it, to work when you are unmotivated, to be disciplined when you are tired, to stay calm when you are angry, to keep moving when your mind tells you to stop. Because every time you do this, you train your identity, and identity is the engine of your destiny. The reason most people never change is because they try to build new habits with an old identity. But you must destroy that identity completely and rebuild it through action, not words. And the moment you realize this, you stop telling yourself who you are and you start showing yourself who you are becoming. Because action writes your identity far louder than thoughts ever could. And the more disciplined actions you take, the more you begin to see yourself as someone capable of extraordinary things. And this is where you start to feel a subtle shift that most people never experience. You stop needing motivation. You stop needing external approval. You stop needing permission. Because now you operate from a place of self-respect. And self-respect is built through sacrifice, through choosing what is right for your future over what is easy in the moment. Through delaying gratification, through rejecting excuses, through doing what others refuse to do. That is why the path of self-rescue is lonely. Not because people abandon you, but because most people cannot follow you where you are going. They cannot understand why you wake up early, why you train your mind, why you push your limits, why you study, why you build routines, why you cut off distractions, why you stay focused. Because they have not taken responsibility for their own lives. They are still waiting for someone to come change everything. And you cannot wait with them anymore. Because every day you waste waiting is a day you could have spent evolving. And when you embrace this path fully, you start to see discipline not as something you force yourself to do, but as something you are drawn toward. Because discipline becomes the language of your destiny, the rhythm of your transformation, the proof that you are not the same person you were before. You begin to walk differently, think differently, approach problems differently, because now, when life becomes difficult, you don't collapse, you don't complain, you don't run. Instead, you stand still like a stone in a storm and say, "I can handle this." Because you know that every challenge is shaping you into the person you need to be for the future you want. Obstacles become lessons, failures become teachers, pain becomes fuel, criticism becomes guidance, fear becomes a compass. And you stop looking for a savior because you have already become one. This is when you begin to operate with a deeper sense of clarity because you discover that you are not fighting the world, you are fighting the old version of you. And the old you will always try to return, always try to pull you back into comfort, always whisper that you can take the easy way out. But now you recognize that voice for what it is, the voice of your own limitations. And you refuse to obey it because you have chosen the path of strength, the path of ownership, the path of self-mastery. And as you continue walking this path, you begin to understand that the world respects those who respect themselves. Opportunities come to those who prepare. Discipline creates luck. Consistency builds doors, and courage opens them. You realize that your life is not defined by what happens to you, but by what you do next. By every choice you make, by every step you take, by every battle you fight internally long before the results arrive. And you understand that saving yourself is not a moment. It is a lifetime commitment, a promise to never abandon yourself, a promise to face reality honestly, a promise to build a mind that cannot be broken, a promise to become the type of person your younger self would be proud of and your future self would be grateful for. And when this understanding becomes your foundation, you no longer feel afraid that no one is coming to save you. Instead, you feel powerful because you realize that you never needed anyone to save you in the first place. You needed courage, you needed clarity, you needed responsibility. And now you have them. And with these three things, you can rebuild your life from nothing. You can transform your destiny with nothing but discipline and willpower. You can become the kind of person who rises regardless of circumstance. And once you reach this point, the world no longer intimidates you, because you know that everything you want depends on you, and everything you fear can be conquered by you, and everything you dream of can be built by you, because you are no longer waiting for a hero. You are becoming one.
Part 3 begins when you realize that becoming your own savior does not end with discipline. It expands into every part of your life, demanding that you build a level of self-awareness most people never achieve. Because saving yourself is not just about grinding or working harder. It is about understanding your flaws with brutal honesty, identifying your patterns, exposing the lies you tell yourself, and confronting the parts of you that hide in the dark, hoping you never notice them. Because the truth is that everyone wants to be great, but very few want to face the truth about who they are today. And if you cannot look at your weaknesses without flinching, you will never overcome them. This is why most people stay the same year after year. They are terrified of self-honesty, terrified of acknowledging that their lack of discipline is their fault, that their laziness is their responsibility, that their distractions are self-inflicted, that their bitterness comes from avoidance, that their jealousy comes from insecurity, that their failures come from choices. And until you confront these truths, you remain powerless, because you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. And becoming your own savior demands that you sit with these uncomfortable truths and swallow them whole, not to shame yourself, but to liberate yourself. Because once you admit your weaknesses without excuses, you gain the power to destroy them. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that self-mastery comes from knowing exactly where you fall short and attacking those weaknesses daily until they no longer control you. And that is the next phase of saving yourself, rebuilding your character from the inside out, shaping your values, your standards, your identity, and your habits so they align with the person you want to become, not the person you have been. This process requires you to set a higher standard for yourself than anyone else ever will, to demand more from yourself than anyone expects, to hold yourself accountable even when no one is watching, because the world only sees the results, but you must live with the process, and the process requires a level of discipline, patience, and honesty that feels unbearable at times. But this is where you grow the most. When the self you used to be is screaming to stop, to quit, to return to comfort, and you choose to move forward anyway. And when you do this consistently, your identity shifts from someone who hopes for change to someone who creates change, from someone who fears failure to someone who hunts growth, from someone who waits for motivation to someone who acts with discipline. And this shift is what separates the strong from the weak, the successful from the stuck, the leaders from the followers. You begin to understand that most people are not defeated by external challenges, but by internal chaos. Their minds are untrained, their impulses are uncontrolled, their fears are loud, their focus is scattered, and they live in reaction instead of intention. But when you commit to saving yourself, you take command of your inner world first, because it is impossible to win externally if you are collapsing internally. This is why the next stage of your transformation requires you to master your environment, to remove distractions ruthlessly, to distance yourself from people who drain you, to break habits that weaken you, to reject activities that numb your potential, because your environment either builds your discipline or destroys it. Too many people try to grow while staying surrounded by the same temptations, the same people, the same routines that made them weak. But you must understand that environment is stronger than willpower. And saving yourself means creating a world around you that supports who you want to become, not who you were. This may mean walking alone for a while, distancing yourself from friends who don't grow, cutting off people who complain, avoiding places that kill your ambition, limiting social media that distracts you, and spending more time in silence, in reflection, in intentional solitude. Because solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is the territory where you meet yourself, where you think clearly, where you plan, where you build the foundation of your future self. Most people avoid silence because silence exposes the truth they refuse to confront. But you must embrace it, because silence is the forge where clarity is born. And once you create this environment, your discipline begins to feel lighter, your mind becomes sharper, your focus becomes deeper, and your identity becomes more stable, because you are no longer torn between who you want to be and what holds you back. You begin to operate with a sense of calm, a sense of direction, a sense of purpose, because now your life has structure, your days have intention, your actions have meaning. And that is when you begin to understand a deeper truth. Saving yourself is not a single act, but a lifestyle, a way of living where you consistently choose the harder, wiser, growth-oriented path, even when no one is watching, even when no one claps for you, even when no one understands. Because you are not doing it for applause. You are doing it for evolution. And as you walk this path long enough, you begin to notice something powerful. The world starts responding to the new version of you. Opportunities appear that never existed before, not because the world changed, but because you changed. People treat you differently, not because they suddenly respect you, but because you carry yourself with self-respect. Challenges feel lighter, not because they're easier, but because you are stronger. Fear no longer stops you, not because you're fearless, but because courage has become your default response. And at this stage, you begin to understand why no one is coming to save you. Because this transformation, this level of growth, this depth of strength can only be earned through your own struggle. No one else can build your discipline for you. No one else can fight your inner battles. No one else can face your fears. No one else can master your mind. Greatness cannot be gifted to you. It can only be forged. And forging requires fire. And the fire is the uncomfortable you keep avoiding. And once you stop avoiding it and start embracing it, the fire becomes the very thing that purifies you. This is the phase where you start to feel gratitude for your challenges, your failures, your struggles, because you realize they were not obstacles but training, not punishment but preparation, not setbacks but opportunities to grow into the person you needed to be. And once you reach this understanding, you stop seeing life as something happening to you and begin seeing it as something happening for you. And that shift alone makes you unstoppable. Because now you are not a victim of circumstance, but a creator of outcomes. Not a passenger, but a driver. Not a follower, but a leader of your own destiny. And this is where your confidence changes. Real confidence, the unshakable kind, is not built from achievements or praise. It is built from knowing you can survive your darkest moments, knowing you can rebuild yourself after failure, knowing you can command your own mind, knowing you can depend on yourself even when everyone else disappears. This is the confidence that cannot be taken away, cannot be faked, cannot be broken. And once you have this, you finally understand the deepest truth of all. You were never meant to be saved by someone else. You were meant to rise through your own effort, your own discipline, your own clarity, your own resilience. Because the person you become through saving yourself is far greater, far stronger, far wiser than the person you would have become if life had handed you an easier path. And now, standing in this new identity, you realize something quietly powerful. No one is coming to save you, and that is exactly why you will.
Part 4 begins at the moment you understand that saving yourself is no longer about escaping your old life, but about rising into a new one. A life defined not by survival, but by purpose, not by fear, but by direction. Because once you have taken control of your mind, your actions, your discipline, and your identity, you reach a point where you must now decide what kind of life you want to build with that power. And this is where most people fail, not because they are weak, but because they do not know what they want. They have spent so long reacting to life that they never learned how to design it. But when you step into the mindset of self-ownership, you realize you can no longer drift. You can no longer wander aimlessly. You can no longer rely on luck or impulse or other people to set your path. Because a person who saves themselves must also lead themselves. And leadership of the self requires clarity of vision, a purpose strong enough to pull you forward even on the days you feel tired or lost or doubtful. And this purpose does not magically appear. It is built slowly, through reflection, through honesty, through understanding what truly matters to you, through recognizing that a meaningful life is not discovered, it is constructed intentionally, piece by piece, decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice. And this is the next stage of your evolution, becoming the architect of your destiny. This requires something even harder than discipline. It requires understanding what you value deeply, what you want your life to stand for, what kind of person you want to become when no one is watching. Because without vision, discipline collapses. Without direction, effort becomes wasted. Without purpose, strength turns into restlessness. And the people who rise in life are the ones who combine discipline with direction. So you begin to ask yourself the questions most people are too afraid to confront. What do I want my life to mean? What kind of impact do I want to leave? What kind of mind do I want to carry? What type of body, habits, relationships, and legacy do I want to build? And as you answer these questions, something shifts inside you. Life stops being something you endure and becomes something you craft intentionally. And once you have even the faintest outline of your purpose, your actions begin to align. You start eliminating what doesn't serve your direction and amplifying what does. You stop wasting time on meaningless pursuits. You stop chasing temporary highs. You stop living for approval. Because now you have something far more powerful, internal direction. And this direction becomes the compass that guides your decisions, your habits, your sacrifices, and even your resilience. Because when you know why you're suffering, the suffering becomes bearable, even meaningful, because it is taking you somewhere worthwhile. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that a person with a clear purpose becomes invincible.
because even pain becomes useful, even struggle becomes strength, even obstacles become guidance. And once you anchor your life to a purpose, every difficulty becomes a test you are willing to face because it is aligned with where you are heading. And now, at this stage, you begin to notice something strange. You used to chase motivation, but now motivation chases you, because when your daily actions align with a purpose you actually believe in, you become driven naturally. You become focused naturally. You become consistent naturally, and you stop struggling against yourself. Your days become structured tapestries of intention, woven from routines and habits that keep you grounded, sharp, and aligned. And you begin to feel a sense of internal stability that most people will never experience, because most people are torn by conflicting desires, but you have begun to replace confusion with clarity. And as this internal stability grows, you begin to upgrade your standards, how you speak to yourself, how you treat your body, how you manage your time, how you respond to problems, how you carry your presence, how you choose the people around you. Because purpose raises your expectations of yourself, and those expectations naturally eliminate the people, habits, and environments that no longer fit the future you are building. You begin to surround yourself with silence, discipline, ambition, focus, and peace, because you understand that nothing destroys potential faster than chaos. And now you protect your peace with the same intensity you used to protect your excuses. This is the phase where you truly begin to evolve, where you realize that saving yourself is not just about escaping weakness, but about cultivating greatness, not just about cutting off what holds you back, but feeding what pushes you forward, not just about rejecting comfort, but building character strong enough to carry a meaningful life. And once you begin living with purpose, you notice that the world stops feeling like an enemy, because now you are no longer lost in it, you are navigating it. And now you begin to walk differently, think differently, even breathe differently, because everything you do carries intention. People around you feel the difference even if they cannot explain it. They sense the shift in your discipline, your focus, your energy, your presence. Because a person who has rescued themselves radiates a quiet strength that cannot be faked. A kind of grounded confidence that does not demand attention, but commands respect. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone, because your actions prove everything. You no longer need to convince anyone, because your results speak for you. You no longer need validation, because you validate yourself through your consistency, through your self-respect, through your alignment with your purpose. And this is the moment you understand a deeper truth. Saving yourself was never just about surviving. It was about unlocking who you were capable of becoming. And now that you have entered this stage, you realize you are only beginning to see what you can do. Because once you take responsibility, once you build discipline, once you master your mind, once you create purpose, you become a force of nature. Someone who cannot be stopped by doubt, by fear, by failure, by judgment, by circumstance, because you have built your life on internal strength rather than external luck. And this internal strength transforms the way you approach everything. You no longer fear problems because you trust yourself to solve them. You no longer fear failure because you trust yourself to recover. You no longer fear uncertainty because you trust yourself to adapt. And this trust in yourself is the deepest form of freedom a human can experience. Because once you trust yourself, nothing outside of you has power over you anymore. Not opinions, not judgments, not rejection, not setbacks, not loneliness, not adversity. You become unshakable. And not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. And now, standing in this new version of yourself, you realize something profound. You no longer care that no one is coming to save you, because you no longer need saving. You have become the person your past self prayed for, the person your younger self needed, the person your future self depends on. You have become the one who can carry yourself through storms, guide yourself through darkness, build yourself in silence, and rise from any fall. And this is where the next chapter of your life begins. Not with waiting, not with hoping, not with wishing, but with owning your destiny in full. Because now you know with absolute clarity that no one is coming to save you. And that is the greatest gift life could give you. Because it forced you to become someone capable of saving yourself.
Part 6 begins when you finally understand that saving yourself is not just a transformation of mind, discipline, purpose, or identity. It is the evolution of your entire existence, a shift so deep that the world around you begins to reorganize itself in response to the person you are becoming. But this shift does not happen overnight, and it does not happen without resistance, because the universe will test every layer of your growth, not to punish you, but to refine you, to ensure that the strength you build is not temporary, but permanent, not fragile, but unshakable. And it starts by challenging every place where you are still weak, still reactive, still tempted, still afraid, because the parts of you that remain untrained will always try to pull you back, and so life exposes them one by one. Your impatience, your anger, your need for validation, your attachment to comfort, your tendency to avoid hard truths, your fear of uncertainty. And the question becomes not whether you experience these weaknesses, but whether you confront them with the identity you've built or collapse back into the identity you once escaped. And this is the moment where the real battle begins. Not the early motivational rush that carried you through the first steps, not the emotional high of deciding to change, but the long, consistent war between the person you used to be and the person you are becoming. And this war is fought every day, in your habits, your reactions, your choices, your discipline, your silence, your patience, your thoughts. Because saving yourself requires not only creating a stronger self, but constantly defeating the weaker self within you. And this is where the Stoic mindset becomes essential. The understanding that suffering, difficulty, obstacles, and setbacks are not signs that you are failing, but signs that you are evolving. Because the universe does not test the stagnant, it tests the rising. And the moment you begin to climb, life throws storms at you, not to break you, but to see if your foundation is real, if your commitment is true, if your discipline is authentic. Because talk means nothing without trials. And so as you navigate this phase, you must remember that every frustration is a lesson, every rejection is redirection, every failure is feedback. Every struggle is stretching you into someone you need to be. But most people run from this phase. They interpret resistance as a sign to quit, discomfort as a signal to return to comfort, difficulty as proof they are on the wrong path. But you must understand that the path of growth is supposed to feel this way, supposed to be heavy, supposed to be uncertain, supposed to challenge everything you once believed about yourself. Because if it didn't, it wouldn't change you. And now you must cultivate something deeper than motivation and stronger than discipline. You must cultivate endurance, the ability to persist through the seasons of life that feel unfair, slow, empty, lonely, or overwhelming. Because endurance is the muscle that carries you from the person you are to the person you are destined to become. Endurance is built not by victory, but by struggle, not by comfort, but by pressure, not by praise, but by silence. And when you learn to endure, you become unstoppable, because no circumstance can break someone who knows how to keep moving even when movement feels impossible. And during this phase, you will be tempted to slip back into old habits, because the old self is familiar, easy, predictable, comforting, and the brain always craves what it knows, even when what it knows is harming you. But saving yourself means choosing growth over familiarity, purpose over pleasure, long-term strength over short-term relief. And every time you make this choice, you strengthen the new identity and weaken the old one. This is how transformation becomes permanent, not through intensity, but through repetition, through consistently choosing the future over the past. And as you continue walking this path, you begin to notice that the chaos that once controlled you now reveals your strengths. The problems that once overwhelmed you now expose your progress. The fears that once paralyzed you now inspire courage, because you are no longer the same person who began this journey. Your resilience has grown, your patience has expanded, your clarity has sharpened, your self-respect has deepened, and your energy has changed. But now you must prepare for another, deeper layer of saving yourself, understanding that the world will not always support your growth, that many people will misunderstand your evolution, that some will feel threatened, jealous, uncomfortable, or insecure around the new version of you, not because you have done anything wrong, but because your growth reveals their stagnation. Your discipline exposes their laziness. Your clarity highlights their confusion. Your purpose magnifies their lack of direction. And saving yourself requires accepting that not everyone will come with you into your future, that some connections are meant for the old you, not the new you. And holding on to them will only slow you down, drain your energy, or pull you back into patterns you worked hard to escape. This stage of letting go is painful, not because you are cruel, but because growth forces separation, forces boundaries, forces elevation, and not everyone can breathe at the altitude you are rising to. But you must remember that anyone who truly belongs in your future will grow with you, support you, challenge you, respect your boundaries, and understand your journey. And anyone who cannot will naturally fall away, making space for people who align with your purpose, your standards, your values. And once you accept this truth, you free yourself from the guilt of outgrowing people, because you finally understand that protecting your future is not selfish, it is necessary. And at this point in your journey, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to shift from seeking strength to embodying strength, from chasing purpose to living purpose, from reacting unconsciously to responding with intention, from surviving emotionally to thriving internally. And this evolution creates a depth of peace you have never experienced before. This peace is not the absence of problems, but the mastery of your inner world. The ability to remain calm even in chaos, focused even in distraction, disciplined even in desire, and grounded even in uncertainty. Because saving yourself has finally taught you the greatest truth. Power is internal, always internal, never external. And now, standing in this new era of your life, you realize that you are no longer rebuilding the broken pieces of who you once were. You are now expanding the strongest parts of who you've become. And this expansion opens doors you never imagined, opportunities you never expected, courage you never felt before. Because the person you are now is capable of things the old you could never comprehend. And as this realization sinks in, you feel something profound and liberating. You are no longer afraid that no one is coming to save you, because you have become strong enough to save yourself, wise enough to lead yourself, disciplined enough to build yourself, and powerful enough to create a life that reflects the highest version of who you are meant to be.
Part 7 begins when you realize that saving yourself is no longer about healing what was broken, escaping what was painful, or correcting what was wrong. It is now about expansion, about stepping fully into the life you were meant to live, about claiming a level of power, clarity, and self-mastery that few people ever reach. And this stage feels different from the earlier phases because now the battle is no longer about survival. It is about elevation, not about fixing your past, but about building your future. And the moment you understand this, your mindset undergoes another shift. You begin to think not as the person who escaped darkness, but as the person who creates light. Not as someone fighting weaknesses, but as someone cultivating strengths. Not as someone trying to prove themselves, but as someone living with purpose. And this change is subtle, yet life-altering, because once your identity elevates, your expectations elevate, your habits elevate, your decisions elevate, and naturally, your entire reality elevates with them. But at this stage, the tests become more sophisticated. They are no longer basic temptations or obvious distractions. They become internal barriers disguised as comfort, ease, stagnation, and complacency. And this is where many people fall back without realizing it. Because once life becomes stable, once discipline becomes routine, once the chaos is gone, the mind starts craving old patterns. And the greatest enemy of your next level is the comfort of your current level. Because comfort whispers to you that you've done enough, grown enough, changed enough, that you deserve to slow down, relax, settle. But settling is just another form of surrender, a quieter version of defeat. And if you allow yourself to settle, you will slowly drift back into the version of yourself you thought you left behind. This is why saving yourself is lifelong. It is not a straight line upward, but an ongoing recommitment to the person you want to be, especially when things get easy, because ease is seductive, ease is deceptive, ease is the silent thief of growth. And you must be vigilant enough to recognize that your journey does not end simply because life becomes more manageable. In fact, this is where the most dangerous illusion appears. The illusion that you no longer need to push, that discipline is optional, that you have already won. But mastery requires constant refinement, and people who achieve greatness are not the ones who worked hard once, but the ones who work hard always. Not because they lack peace, but because they respect their potential too much to let it waste away. And now you must understand a deeper truth. Saving yourself means honoring your potential relentlessly. Refusing to shrink yourself for convenience, refusing to slow down for comfort, refusing to dim your ambition just because life has become a little easier. And this level of commitment is extremely rare, which is why so few people reach their highest version. Most people climb halfway and stop. They build enough discipline to escape their old life, but not enough to rise into their ultimate one. They become stronger than their past, but not stronger than their potential. And so they live in an in-between, not suffering but not fulfilled, not broken but not fully alive. And this in-between is more dangerous than rock bottom, because it convinces you that you're doing fine when you could be doing extraordinary. But you have come too far to settle there. You have sacrificed too much to stop now, and this is the moment where you must choose elevation intentionally, to push beyond good enough and step into exceptional, to operate not from survival mode or recovery mode, but from creator mode, the mode where you wake up every day asking not, how do I avoid slipping back, but how do I rise even higher? And as you enter this elevated mindset, your relationship with goals changes. You stop setting goals for validation or appearance, and instead you set them as expressions of your potential, as ways to test your limits, as ways to expand your identity. And the more you pursue this kind of growth, the more you realize that success is not about competing with the world, but about outgrowing your previous self, about becoming so aligned, so grounded, so powerful internally that external achievements become reflections of your inner evolution rather than sources of it. And this alignment brings a level of inner peace you've never known before. Not the fragile peace that collapses when life becomes difficult, but a deep, unshakable peace built from discipline, clarity, and self-respect. A peace that stays with you even in uncertainty because you trust yourself, you trust your path, you trust your process. And this trust gives you the freedom to dream bigger than you ever have, because now your dreams are not fantasies. They are destinations you know you can reach through action, repetition, and resilience. But this stage of your journey also demands something many people avoid: the courage to let your world expand, the courage to embrace opportunities that once intimidated you, the courage to step into rooms that once overwhelmed you, the courage to attempt things your old self never believed were possible. Because saving yourself is not just about removing what harms you, it is about stepping boldly into what grows you, even if it terrifies you, even if it challenges you, even if it demands a higher version of you every day. And this constant evolution means you will begin to operate with a level of ambition that may confuse people, because most of the world is content with average, threatened by excellence, intimidated by discipline. But you do not exist to make others comfortable. You exist to rise, to expand, to become the highest expression of your potential. And anyone who feels offended by your growth is simply revealing they were never meant to go where you're going. And as your life expands, you will encounter new levels of resistance, not the chaotic pain of your early transformation, but the sophisticated resistance of responsibility, leadership, expectation, momentum, and the emotional weight of becoming someone others look up to. But this too is part of the journey, because saving yourself eventually leads to leading others, not through words, but through action. Not through preaching, but through action. And you must be strong enough to carry this weight without losing yourself to pressure, ego, or pride. Humility becomes essential here, not the weak humility of self-minimization, but the strong humility of grounded awareness. The humility of knowing that no matter how much you rise, you remain a student of life, always learning, always improving, always refining. And this humility protects you from the arrogance that destroys many who rise too quickly. And now, as you stand in this new era of your evolution, you realize something profound. Everything you have built, your discipline, your purpose, your identity, your peace, your ambition, your clarity, came from one truth you accepted long ago: that no one was coming to save you. And what once felt like a burden has now become your greatest source of strength. Because if no one is coming to save you, that means no one can stop you. No one can limit you. No one can hold you back. No one can decide your future except you. And this realization, when fully embraced, transforms you into a force of nature, self-directed, self-mastered, self-made, and unstoppable. Because the person who saves themselves becomes the person who can do anything.
Part 8. begins when you fully understand that saving yourself is not just a phase of your life, it is your life. It is the lens through which you now view every challenge, every opportunity, every emotion, every goal, and every interaction. Because the moment you accepted that no one was coming to save you, you unknowingly committed to a lifelong evolution, a lifelong sharpening, a lifelong alignment with your highest potential. And at this stage, you begin to recognize that everything in your world now reflects the inner strength you've built, the discipline you've forged, and the standards you've raised. But with this recognition comes another layer of truth, that the more powerful you become, the more responsibility you carry. The more you rise, the more pressure you feel. The more clarity you gain, the more solitude you must endure. And the more you grow, the fewer people you find who understand the path you're walking, not because you're superior, but because you've chosen a life most people will never choose, a life of ownership rather than excuses, a life of action rather than avoidance, a life of purpose rather than drifting. And this divergence means that much of your future journey must be walked alone. Not lonely, but alone in intention, alone in mindset, alone in discipline, because the higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes, and only those who have trained themselves to breathe at that altitude can stay with you. And as you continue on this ascent, you begin to understand that solitude is not a punishment, but a privilege, a space where your mind becomes sharper, your vision becomes clearer, and your purpose strengthens without the noise of the world. And in this solitude, you begin crafting the next stage of your evolution, the stage where you no longer react to life, but design it deliberately, directing your energy toward the person you want to become 5, 10, even 20 years from now. Because saving yourself taught you to survive, but expanding yourself will teach you to thrive. And thriving requires a long-term mindset that most people never develop. You begin to think in decades, not days, in systems, not impulses, in identity, not outcomes. And this shift gives you a power few possess. The power to build a future intentionally rather than accidentally. And with this power comes an understanding that your habits must match the destiny you're trying to build, that your daily actions must align with your highest vision, that your routines must be sculpted around the long-term version of yourself rather than the short-term comforts you once craved. And this is where many people stumble, because they forget that growth is a daily commitment, not a momentary spark. But you have lived through enough transformation to know that consistency is your greatest ally. And so you refine your routines deeper. You strengthen your self-discipline further. You tighten your standards even more, not out of obsession, but out of respect for the future you are building. And yet, even as your routines sharpen and your purpose strengthens, there will be moments where you feel the weight of everything you've built pressing onto your shoulders. Moments where you question whether you can carry the expectations, the pressure, the responsibility. But it is in these moments that you must remember that the version of you who doubted is not the version of you who survived everything it took to reach this point. You have endured storms, overcome failures, rebuilt yourself from brokenness, walked alone when necessary, chosen discipline over comfort countless times, and none of those victories were accidental. They were forged through resilience, and this resilience will carry you through the weight of your new life as well. And as you remind yourself of this strength, your posture changes, your mindset stabilizes, and you feel a new surge of clarity. That everything you want from this point forward requires not more intensity, but more refinement, not more motivation, but more consistency, not more force, but more precision. Because mastery is not loud, it is controlled, calm, deliberate, and sharp. And mastery is exactly what this stage of your journey demands. And now you begin to observe the world differently, noticing patterns others overlook, recognizing opportunities others dismiss, avoiding traps others walk into. And this heightened awareness becomes another form of power, an internal compass guiding you toward your highest path. You begin making choices that the old version of you would never understand. Choices that require sacrifice, patience, restraint, and courage, because you now see life not through emotion, but through alignment, not through impulse, but through strategy. And this strategic thinking becomes a defining trait of the person you're becoming. And as this mental clarity deepens, you start to shift from building yourself internally to shaping your external world with intention. Crafting your environment, your habits, your relationships, your ambitions, and your daily structure around excellence. Because now you understand that your outer life must reflect the inner strength you've cultivated.